I think it's important for LGBTQ people to get involved in STEAM because not only are your ideas important, they're probably unique. I love filmmaking, but what I really love is teaching other people how to tell their stories. My name is Mike Tringe, my pronouns are he, him, and my profession is I'm a filmmaker, also a CEO and co-founder. Let me say, as a filmmaker, you are a storyteller, and a storyteller with pictures. So our company is Creator Up, and we make it easy for other companies to order custom videos at scale. And the way we do that is we have a network of about 8,000 creative people plus, and we staff the client projects with teams from that network. So it's a marketplace model. My role is, as co-founder and CEO, a little bit of everything, but in particular, I'm pretty good at going out and building and growing the company with new clients, new partnerships, and just building our footprint.
Could you talk a little bit about how you identify within the LGBTQ plus community?
Sure. I'm gay, and for me, that's been quite a long journey. I embrace it wholeheartedly, and I talk about it any chance that I get with my employees, with my colleagues. I've been out for almost 20 years, but I came out late. So for me, gay was something that was really new, and I had to come to learn how to be gay, whatever that means, because I grew up in a very small town in Nebraska. Being from a small town is important to me. I grew up around 5,000 people, and that for me really makes up a big part of who I am. It's how I interact with the world, it's how I see the world. Everybody's kind of like my neighbor, and that's how I interact with everyone. And I found that's kind of funny for a lot of people, because if you grow up in a city or a big population and you're not used to just kind of being friendly with everyone, that can come across as a little weird. But that's how I am. I feel like a small town kid wherever I go. At the same time, I couldn't be myself. Looking back, I feel that's kind of sad, but LA really opened up my eyes in terms of what it meant to be gay and out and okay with that. So when I go back to my hometown, I kind of feel like I'm a different person, which is weird, but I think the values are the same. I'm friendly, I'm down to earth, I think big. I really didn't know any gay people until college. People were just not out. And so as a result of that, I actually later learned that some of my friends at that time were gay, but they weren't gay in high school. I was a track runner mostly. So I did other sports as well, like basketball and football, but ended up going to college and running hurdles in college. I got really close to my coaches because they really pushed me, and athletics were very important to me. And I think that's kind of what got me through, was really focusing on like, hey, what am I good at that I can excel at? Through stories, through film, actually, is how I came to know who I was and how I saw myself. I went to an LGBTQ film festival for the very first time. It was a very courageous thing for me to do. And I was in that theater watching an LGBTQ film, which I didn't even know existed. And all of a sudden, I really did see myself. I was like, this is me on screen. And it's funny to say that like a character on a screen helped me see who I was instead of a person who, I obviously had interacted with gay people in college and didn't feel comfortable. At the very beginning, my Sunday school teacher's daughter was interested in filmmaking and had Adobe Premiere. And so she showed me how to use it, and I kind of got interested in it. But beyond that, it was really my dad had an old RCA, like put it on your shoulder video recorder, and I just took that around with me a lot. And I had all these tapes, and I don't even know what I was filming or why I was filming it, but I seemed like maybe it was a way for me to not have to physically interact with people, but be able to interact with them in another way. Yeah, I have a lot of footage of just me documenting my life for, I don't know, the from ages 22 to 26. And so that's how I got started telling stories. I loved filming. It was passion, and I couldn't explain it because I was a pre-med student and I was going to be a doctor. Obviously, I didn't do that. I just really loved being able to have these types of conversations and observe another human in their life and tell that story about them. So that's what really drew me to the camera, was actually the intimacy of being able to get to know another person, to tell another person's story, and then actually being able to help others do the same was really important to me. Because as you can imagine, I mean, that's how I got to know myself a little bit. And my view of the world was that if more people could not only tell their story, but tell other stories, that the world would just be closer, more like neighbors.
Yeah.
My path from pre-med to teacher to filmmaker was such that it was a break for me. I really was planning to go to medical school. I mean, I took the MCATs. Obviously, why do you take organic chemistry if you're not going to go to medical school? But I decided to take 3 years or 2 years off and travel, and I taught high school English at an American school in Morocco. That's where I also had more time to experiment, to explore, and be a little bit more professional with my filmmaking. So I started making documentaries, and I started attending festivals, and I just fell in love. I was like, there is no way I can go to medical school at this point, because I really did fall in love with the medium. I fell in love with everything about filmmaking.
What types of documentaries did you make while you were there?
Docu-stories, people. Super interested in biographies and how people got to where they were in their life. I told the story of a woman who was Moroccan, who became a DJ. She moved from Morocco to Germany and back and decided to DJ in Morocco. And as a woman DJing in Morocco, it's not easy. So I was super interested in like how she was navigating the Islamic world of male-dominated everything. And she was just so effervescent, so incredible. And I was able to capture her story, her energy. I felt it was a story that needed to be told. It all started actually with one class that I took as an elective in college. So as I said, I was pre-med, but I took a filmmaking and history class. And a part of that assignment was to make a documentary. I learned editing at that time. Previously, I hadn't really done any professional editing. Then after that, it was all self-taught. So I literally was just like doing things that felt right, that felt correct, and making things that seemed interesting to me. At that time, after going to festivals, making films, I felt compelled to try to get a more formal education. So I went to USC Film School. That was kind of a surprise that I got in. I actually was rejected twice, waitlisted once. After getting to film school, which was completely overwhelming, it was just immersive. Everybody was a filmmaker, everybody was good, and they were studying something specific: writing, directing, editing, sound. And I just really had no idea that all these different areas had specialization and that that's what people did for a living. So once I got to LA, I was pretty much on a film set for 4 years straight. And I was like, okay, this is how it's done. Then I graduated with those technical skills and started working in the film business, which was totally different, but packaging films, selling films, helping to find talent at an agency, completely different type of learning experience. And then moved into different worlds as well, like the studio world, the digital world, and it just had this kind of like 360 education from the time when I DIY'd it to the time when I was like really immersed in the industry. The reason that I went into film in the first place was I always thought it was absolutely incredible that you could take an idea, turn it into a story, put it on a screen, and have everybody in the world see it and pay for it. And that I thought was like, wow, there's a business here behind taking an idea from nothing and making something out of it. So from that perspective, of course I was interested in the technical parts of it, but I was even more interested in the business parts of it. And I really leaned into that after I graduated. I really wanted to understand, how does content get in front of people? So from that perspective, it completely influenced my entire career trajectory. Starting in film distribution, moving into digital content, I got really frustrated with how slow a lot of the processes were in traditional industry. Film and TV, to me, there was a lot of waste, not a lot of speed, and I just really couldn't see myself spending time in such a slow-moving world. So I saw digital happening, I saw YouTube happening, I saw all these other platforms emerging. That's, for me, where I saw creativity, storytelling, originality, and I wanted to move closer in that direction. So after Blip, I said, okay, what can we do? What ideas can I come up with where more people can have the opportunity to tell their stories and be paid for it, right? Which is why I started the company creatorup.com.
And can you talk more about what CreatorUp does, kind of go into detail?
What we do is we help companies and organizations all over the world get any type of media made. And the way that we do that is through our network of over 8,000 plus creatives that we source, train, vet, certify, and match to projects for clients. Why I think that's exciting is that as a filmmaker, especially, if you've graduated from a film school or not graduated from a film school, we all know that this industry, unfortunately, is not what you know. It's who you know. And I think that's sad. I think that that is limiting. And so what CreatorUp does is we try to give opportunities to creative people to work for companies or organizations that they're excited about based on their skills, based on their experience, based on what they're interested in, what they're excited by. You need to have a representative. You need to have a sponsor. CreatorUp is that sponsor. We go out, build relationships with corporates, with higher ed, with nonprofits. That's what our business does. And then we are able to create teams of creative people who are qualified, who are talented, good at their jobs, to execute those projects for those clients. For me, why that's so exciting is that as a creative person, you want to mix things up. You want to try something new. And so to work for Google, to work for the Special Olympics, to work for a different team in Tennessee or Abu Dhabi, that's exciting. And to not also have to be the one always going out and finding that work, which is what creative people don't love doing. We just like making things.
I also really think it's interesting the ways that you all are using, kind of entering into the fields of like virtual reality and things like that.
Yes.
As kind of the next steps in the film industry in general. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and the work that you do around that.
Virtual reality was one of the new mediums that we observed was going to be exciting for consumers, but also for creative people. My co-founder, he started a YouTube channel, which was focused on VR education. And it's one of the largest free VR education channels on the web. And as a result of that, we really started building community around the world of virtual reality. And as a startup co-founder, it's a lot easier to go where no one else has gone before than to go where everyone else has already been. So for us, virtual reality was a way for us to not only be creative in new ways, but find new opportunities to make new things that no one had ever made before. We, as far as I know, produced one of the very first virtual reality live stream sporting events, which was the Special Olympics 50th anniversary in Abu Dhabi, and it was absolutely incredible. Not only were we streaming the opening, the closing, but we were telling stories of these athletes, their home life, what it was like to train in 360, literally in 360. And it was just so rewarding, so fun to give these athletes who have such incredible stories a literal 360 storytelling medium. I'd love to continue to empower others through business. I think that's really important. Business to me is a vehicle to allow for ideas to come to life. It's not easy, and it's not as common, I feel, to wear your identity on your sleeve in this industry. Yes, in our industry, the creative media industry is full of LGBTQ creative people. But oftentimes the problem is they can't talk about it in certain situations, like an interview to get a job, which is a problem. The glass ceiling or the walls or whatever you want to call them are very real. I experienced it myself, working at a very high-powered agency that is very well respected, but why can't I be out? It's complicated, right? Could I have been? Possibly, but did I feel comfortable? No, I didn't, and so I wasn't. And this is after I came out. So imagine how that feels, to come out and go back in order to work. It feels awful. I think it starts with your culture, and I think it starts with the founders. So we've always been minority founders. We've always talked about our stories openly and lived our challenges openly and been transparent and clear with how difficult it can be on a daily basis to do your work as someone who is from a diverse background. That in and of itself is so important, just to talk about the challenges and acknowledge the differences. That's foundations. Beyond that, there need to be mechanisms. And so for us, our mechanisms map back to our mission, vision, values, which comes back to culture. But by setting that out there and saying our mission is to empower creative people access to these opportunities who may not have had access to them otherwise. And if everybody knows that, and if everybody believes that, then they act that way. Then there's actual operations and enforcement. You need to hire for diversity. You need to hire and be clear about and to take that into account as a part of your protocols, your processes, whether that's for employees or what we call network, which are the workforce, the incredible, wonderful workforce all over the world that are doing the work on behalf of our clients. A barrier to entry for creative people into the industry can often be language. Knowing what to say, how to say it, who you're saying it to, and feeling like you can't communicate with people who don't understand how you're seeing the world or thinking about the world. You know, when you're sitting in a room and you don't know what to say, and as a result you're not talking, no one's going to know what you're thinking. That kind of goes with language, but also just confidence and having the creative confidence to speak what you're thinking. I remember very specifically when I started working at the agency, sitting around a table with a lot of people every week. We read so many scripts, probably 40 or 50 scripts. And most of the time, I didn't feel comfortable saying my opinion because I felt like it didn't matter, or it wasn't going to be correct, or my point of view as a gay person, I didn't matter in the industry because maybe it wasn't marketable, or whatever. Feeling comfortable, confident, and able to communicate with confidence your creativity, your ideas, is what I think maybe holds a lot of people back from getting started. I was so quiet for so long, I spent a lot of time watching. I became really good at, in my opinion, observing behavior. I became a very visual person. And as someone who didn't feel comfortable speaking, oftentimes, I did feel very comfortable drawing, taking pictures, sharing those images, sharing my films. So from my perspective, kind of like being quiet and observing the world was something that, I don't know, as someone who was not comfortable as an out gay man, was helping me actually see the world differently. In a perfect world for creative people, they would have the opportunities to work on the projects that they love with the skills that they're good at. My advice to employers and managers to be able to create a more open and diverse space for their workforce would be to really start at the foundational level. From a policy perspective, from an enforcement perspective, actually that is where it gets a little bit harder. But if you can set a foundation at the beginning and really make a statement to the public, this is what I believe, this is what we stand for. That to me is what creates space for others to do the same. It gives permission to create a safer place for people to go to work.
What advice would you give to maybe younger LGBTQ plus individuals who are interested in going into filmmaking and maybe are kind of struggling with some of the same things that you had experienced in terms of being out in their workplaces or out in their educational spaces?
You have got to focus on yourself. You've got to better yourself. You've got to constantly be improving and practicing your craft. If you're not doing that, you're not going to advance in any way, shape, or form. So to have the confidence to focus on yourself, that's first. Second, you're never going to get there by yourself. You've got to reach out a hand. You have to raise a hand. You have to ask for help. You have to seek help. That's hard for a lot of people who are uncomfortable, not confident, introverted, which a lot of creative people, by the way, are. And especially if you're not feeling like, okay, this is a place that accepts me. You can form alliances with other creative people who you do feel good working with and start there. What are some resources for new filmmakers, new creative people to find mentors in our industry? I think there are some that are known and out there, and I'm only going to scratch the surface here, but Outfest had a program for new filmmakers, youth filmmakers called Outset. It's a structured, free education program where you get access to industry mentors, equipment, instruction, curriculum space, and have the opportunity to make something. And that's oftentimes what limits creative people, is not having a reel, not having a sample, etc. So festivals like Outfest or other LGBTQ festivals are excellent places to start. They're about community, they're about creativity, they're about collaboration, and I think they're accessible because you can look it up on the internet, you can go, you can buy a movie ticket, and you might just meet your mentor. The advice that I would give to my younger self is don't be scared. I was terrified of what would happen if I came out for so long that it was paralyzing. It's hard to talk about because it makes me sad. But yeah, I would just give myself a boost. The advice that I would give to LGBTQ plus youth is to be yourself. It sounds easy, it's so hard. Because if you don't necessarily even know who you are, that feels even harder. But the good news is we're all figuring it out, right? Every day. I'm almost 45 years old. I'm still figuring it out. And it's okay to be you. In that moment, you're good. Have fun. Enjoy your life. Enjoy the world. I think that permission to be yourself is so valuable.